Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of Prosperous Staffordshire Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Today's date is Friday, the 2nd of February, and the time is now 10 o'clock, and somebody's flying through the door. Welcome everyone to today's meeting, and as usual, if you can make sure that your phones are on silent, and if you've got one of these smartwatches, make sure that's on silent too. We'll go straight on to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies. I believe we've had apologies from Reverend Metcalfe. No one else? David, do we know how Bernard is?
No, not today, sorry.
Okay, so he may turn up then?
He might do.
Okay.
Might be walking, but it takes him a bit longer than usual.
Okay, that's fine. I just thought you might know where he is. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do members have any to declare now? And if so, do so? No? When we go through the agenda, you feel that you need to declare, make sure that you indicate clearly. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January 2024. Are we all in agreement that those were a true record of events? I think David wants to get out of here quickly today. Are you moving those, David? I have to. Can we have a seconder for those minutes? Thank you, Philip. Okay, then we'll move straight on to item 4, which is the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership. Over to you, David Williams.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. The Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership was set up in 2001 with the aim of bringing partner organisations together and reduce road casualties in Staffordshire and in Stoke-on-Trent. Partnership is an informal collaboration designed to improve road safety through the alignment of resources, knowledge and skills across all partner organisations, and various elements of delivery are undertaken by partner organisations on behalf of the Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership. The partnership plans to use a range of measures including education, engagement, enforcement and engineering to support a wider culture change that will see excessive speed and inconsiderate driving behaviour on our roads as socially unacceptable. The partnership is chaired jointly by Ben Adams, the Staffordshire Police Fire and Rescue and Crime Commissioner, and his deputy Helen Fisher. The SSRP Governance Board sets the strategic direction of the partnership and takes ultimate responsibility for key financial decisions and scrutiny. Membership includes senior political representatives from the main partner organisations, and current membership is shown in Appendix 1 of the report. Regular presentation of to the Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee provides an opportunity for us and for additional scrutiny by Staffordshire County Council as one of the partners to ensure that we do the right things and that we inform our public. I will now go over to Mel, who's completely knows everything about this and will be able to answer most questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning, everybody. The partnership's aim is to improve road safety across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. We have adopted an aspirational Vision Zero approach, but in real terms we're seeking to achieve a long-term sustained reduction in collisions. The Charter paragraph 19 of the report shows a significant decline in police-recorded injury collisions in recent years. Whilst this is good news, we are aware of some changes that may have affected recording and timeliness of collision data. Currently, complete collision data is only available up to the end of 2021. These issues are currently being addressed by Staffordshire Police and we hope to have further data available soon. Appendix 2 provides a summary of fatal and serious injury collisions from 2021. This is a sort of indicative selection, so note that it is a relatively small sample but does provide some general indications, and I'll just briefly talk through Appendix 2 for you. So the first two tables cover vehicle and casualty types. So whilst the largest representation relates to motor vehicles, the high number of two-wheeled motor vehicles, in other words motorcyclists and pedal cyclists, as a proportion of the relatively low number of them on the road, is of concern and highlights their vulnerability, and we have quite a bit of targeted work undertaken in that area. The chart showing casualties by age and gender indicates a clear bias towards males. This can be to some extent explained by the fact that males statistically tend to travel more miles than females, although that gap is closing over time. But still, still remains that there is potentially a higher risk for males versus females for being involved in a KSI. The highest number of casualties by age are in the 10 to 19, 20 to 29 and 30 to 39 age ranges, and this supports the focus that we put on road safety education for children and young people. And the last aspect included are the top contributory factors recorded against these collisions. Contributory factors are not absolute, but provide a guide based on the attending police officer's opinion. The top two most common are related to inattention, either not looking properly or not judging another vehicle's path or speed correctly. We're looking at how communication activity can be used to remind people of their responsibilities as a driver. Other key factors shown in the table include exceeding the speed limit and drink driving, which are unfortunately still quite significant factors. Deep dive analysis of collision data is regularly undertaken by the partnership to provide information to support the development of new and existing initiatives. Some areas are well established, such as motorcyclists and young drivers. There are other areas that are currently under development, such as mature road users. So I'll take you through some of the key initiatives that the partnership is involved in the delivery of. The partnership took on the funding of road safety education in schools in 2018. In-person delivery by a team of road safety education officers is focused on the highest priority schools based on a calculation of road safety risk. During the 2022-23 academic year, over 24,000 pupils received direct road safety input from the team across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. Community Speedwatch continues to be very popular with our communities, and we currently have around 80 groups with a total of over 400 active volunteers. A working group has been considering how we can better support our volunteer groups on the roadside and how back office process improvements can enable further growth. Communications and media activity has been an increased focus of the partnership in recent years. The Staffordshire Commissioner's Office has recently agreed to provide resource as a commissioned service on behalf of the partnership to promote road safety campaigns and activity. As part of this, we'll also be looking at refreshing our website. We've recently completed the first phase of upgrades to some of our older fixed camera sites to utilise newer digital technology. This included 20 cameras across 4 sites in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. The sites were selected based on collision reduction performance and recent collision history. There are plans for a further phase of upgrades later this year and also to consider newer sites as well. Our camera van fleet is also undergoing some improvements currently. We've replaced 2 of the camera vans with much newer updated vehicles, and a further 2 replacement camera vans are going to be operational soon. We're also upgrading the camera equipment utilised inside the camera vans, which will bring operational benefits. For many of those detected speeding or committing other traffic offences, referrals are made to the National Driving Offender Retraining Scheme courses, such as the Speed Awareness course. These courses are delivered in Staffordshire by the County Council on behalf of the partnership and Staffordshire Police. These courses have been shown to be more effective in improving driving behaviour than a fine and driving licence points. A recent audit by the national body responsible for the courses found Staffordshire's provision to be overwhelmingly of a high standard. Also of note are plans for an additional course to be implemented locally soon, which is aimed at motorcycling offenders. And finally, a new initiative, which hopefully many of you will be aware of, Neighbourhood Speed Check, was launched last year to provide fast-tracked access for local members to have speeding concerns assessed. So far, over 60 locations have been reviewed, with 9 meeting criteria for new or extended mobile enforcement coverage. Moving on to finance, partners do not contribute financially to the partnership, although they do deliver some services themselves. Funding comes from driving offender educational course referrals and the delivery of externally funded projects on behalf of National Highways and Network Rail. A cost recovery approach is used, with any surplus being used to support additional road safety related activity. Reserves of 1.8 million were held at the end of the last financial year and are being used to fund the digital camera upgrades and the improvements in mobile camera resources. In summary, the partnership would not exist without the ongoing commitment and support from our partners. In particular, their role in delivering road safety activity is key to us achieving our aims to improve road safety, and we're grateful to Staffordshire County Council for the part they play in this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel, for all that information. Speakers, Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. I see that with casualties, the fatal and serious casualties have barely changed, whereas those with slight injuries has been a massive drop. Why is the serious and fatal casualties so stable? I mean, why have they not reduced at the same level as the slight injuries? That's the first question. Second question is that one of the issues around safety is parking on pavements, and that appears to have a very low priority as far as the police are concerned, because it is a police matter. What it means is that people with buggies have to go into the road. People who are visually impaired find again they have to go into the road. Maybe if they've got a guide dog, that's probably what the guide dog would choose to do. And therefore it is a safety issue, and I just wondered what was happening. Obviously in some areas parking on pavements is being banned and it's been given a much higher priority, but it is a real problem. I appreciate that in terrace streets that there is little parking available, but particularly when you have narrow pavements, it is actually creating a real hazard. And thirdly, the question I'd like to ask is about my frustration when you have clearly something which is dangerous. I'll give you an example. Outside Woodcroft School in Leek and Morbridge, a number of commercial vehicles park on the brow of the hill, perfectly legally. There are no yellow lines there yet. And I've taken that up with the commercial vehicle licensing people, because clearly they shouldn't be using that as their commercial car parking, vehicle parking place. But clearly the commercial parking people have done nothing about it. And the problem is that you've got kids crossing the road on the brow of the hill with a school crossing patrol person. And it is dangerous because cars overtaking those vehicles can't see the children as they cross the road, and also it's a cut through, and it's a wide road, so therefore the vehicles are travelling at speed, and there seems to be nothing that can be done about it, despite the fact that aggro from the parents towards the commercial vehicle.
Councillor Atkins, can we keep your questions
Yeah,
related to the report, because that's quite local to yourself, and I think
Okay,
that needs to be...
It's about looking at hazards.
Yeah,
It's about
but
looking
that
at
needs to be
hazards.
taken up outside of this
Yeah,
meeting.
okay.
It's local for you.
Thank you for those questions. So the first question in relation to the difference in change between KSIs and slight casualties. We don't fully understand that change currently. We're working with partners at Staffordshire Police. As mentioned in the report, there have been some changes to recording processes and practices, and we think that some of that might be have a part to play. We also had 2020 was a very different year for us with COVID lockdowns, and that very much changed the pattern of road use, and we think the pattern of collisions in 2021 was also affected. So we're looking forward to getting the 2022 and 2023 data to see if that's an ongoing trend, or to see whether we see perhaps some differences in the numbers in compared to those 2 years. So I think it's a bit early to look at it as a long-term trend, but we're very aware of the differences that we're seeing in the data, and as you mentioned, the concern about the fact that KSIs are not reducing, and we're aware last year was fairly significant for fatal collisions in particular. So we are looking quite deeply into the causation factors behind those collisions to see what else that we at the partnership and our partners can do to try and address those.
Yes, it's not just 2020. I mean, it's a longer term trend than that.
I think the longer term trend indicates the improvements that we're seeing in overall in collisions reducing, but I think it's the recent couple of years that we want to really see whether that's going to continue in the long term. And moving on to your other comments regarding parking and commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles is something that as a partnership we are looking at what we can deliver more in relation to that. It might be something that's difficult for us to address locally because so much of the commercial vehicles are transient, and we're looking at work we can do with national organisations such as National Highways, who already have some work streams focused on business driving and commercial vehicles, but that certainly is a focus of ours. Parking doesn't tend to feature significantly, and I think when we look at the causation factors, whilst I would agree that you know, poor parking does cause a risk, it isn't something that we're seeing coming out strongly in terms of the contributory factors of collision. So it's something that we'll certainly be keeping an eye on, but it's something that other partners tend to address for other reasons. But you know, the partnership will keep a watching eye on that, certainly.
Parking on pavements?
So, as the council will be aware, there is a white paper currently going through government on parking on pavements, and the parts of where you can and how you can park on pavements. You're quite right, in some areas that actually parking on pavements allows traffic to flow. So that is being looked at, but as a whole, to actually just ban parking on pavements would be quite difficult, and also would be a massive enforcement issue, which the police don't do. But it is being looked at as a national problem, and as soon as we know anything more, we can bring it back.
Sam?
Thank you. Mine was around, you said about educating school children, and how, have you thought about educating the parents? Because they tend to be the ones that are causing the problems outside the school. I mean, I visit quite a few schools in my area, and it's not the children that have got the problem, it's the parents, the way they park. And going back to Charlotte's point about the pavements, I removed a car yesterday that was parked fully on a pavement just because she was running late. We booked a lady the other day on zigzag lines just because she was running late, yet there was spaces for her. So it's good that we educate the children, but I feel we need to educate the parents, because that's where the problem is. Because the minute their child gets knocked down, it'll be our faults. And then secondly, you know your speed cameras? I've had 2 removed recently on one road. How do you go about replacing those roads? Those speed cameras. Sorry.
Thank you. So that you're absolutely right that you know, parents are very key for school area safety. What we do try to achieve through some of the education we do in schools is that there is that influence that children can have on their parents, the sort of backseat driving sort of comments. So we do hope that some of that information does filter through from children to their parents. When it comes to parking and road use outside schools, where that's an issue, our team can support with resources that can be used within the school, and also information that can be passed to parents. And I know that Staffordshire Police do some work at schools, and they've provided some of the parking buddies that can be put out to try and deter parents from parking in inappropriate locations. So there is some work going on around you know, trying to encourage safe and responsible road use by parents. But there is probably a limit to the impact that we can have through the partnership. But certainly, where schools are willing to come on board with us, we can support some education work there. And then regarding the removal of cameras, which location? Is it? Ah, yes. So the removal of those cameras was only undertaken after a review to ensure that it wouldn't compromise safety. So there wouldn't be plans currently to replace those cameras, but if we found that there was an issue that warranted the use of speed cameras, we would potentially look at replacing them or putting in another measure if appropriate.
On the school issue, most of my schools do have buddies. I've made sure that they've all got buddies. However, the parents will still move those buddies. They will still pick them up and move them just so they can park. We have them on a pavement to stop cars parking, and the cars nudge up onto the pavement, push the buddies along just so they can... It is daft. I know it's something we can't resolve in a day or anything like that, but I do think that the schools do try hard, the kids do try hard, but I don't think the parents do, unfortunately. So I think it may be that somebody goes out and visits a school and just sees them for themselves what goes on.
Well, one of the things, it's not actually illegal for them to do that, but at the same time, it is obviously quite not very good. Unfortunately, the thing is, we do have to rely on parents trying to park properly. And you're quite right, we do send enforcement out. We are currently going through an enforcement review, and that's part of it, and I think that's the way we do it. We also, I know through the partnership, send out regular reminders to schools to put it out through their newsletters and encourage schools to remind them. But I know teachers and other people have been abused doing similar things, including myself, when we've done it. So if anybody knows what a great remedy for this, I'd love to hear it, but unfortunately at the moment we haven't got one, but we're still trying to work with them as much as we can, and we do lots of initiatives and we still go out there quite regularly when we can. So I think it's just a case of consistently trying to do it and looking as locally if there are any areas there we could utilise. So for as a personal one, I've got a business who now allows the school to park on there, and have extended a free car park so that the school people can, as they drop on and off, can use their car park for free. So if there's those sort of things around, that sort of helps. But unfortunately, you do get the core of people who will park illegally, and I think it's the case of making sure we enforce it and do that to discourage them as far as possible.
I'm not knocking the enforcement officers at all, because I've been out with them. I know they're very few and far between, but when they do come out, they do a brilliant job, so I'm not knocking them at all.
Philip.
Thank you, Chair. I've been a massive supporter of the Safer Roads Partnership since I was in the police and as a councillor, and you do great work. I'm also a fellow of the Institute of Advanced Motorists, so I know quite a bit about road safety and training people to do that. When are we going to get our data up to date? Because all these figures go back to 2021. Now, I know for a fact that last year we had lots of fatal accidents in Staffordshire, particularly in East Staffordshire. Lots of people were saying it was all down to excessive speed, and I know that it wasn't. And we've had petitions given into County Council about speeding on a road between Uttoxeter and Roaster. So we really need our data up to date and to see what was the causes, and what are we going to do to look at the road deaths that we had last year. I know half a dozen of them in East Staffordshire and run that route quite a way. My thoughts are that cars are getting safer. Every year cars are safer, but unfortunately we still have serious accidents due to poor driving. Since COVID, I've noticed that driving behaviour is not good. I drive to Derbyshire every day, and I'm looking at our driving habits, and there's too many distractions I feel in cars now, that people aren't concentrating, they're not forward planning, they're braking late. So in our training that we do under the Safer Roads Partnership, perhaps we need to look at those and address those with the drivers that we're catching. So I've set up speed watching Uttoxeter. We do them very well. I've introduced SID signs in the area. What I want to do is put some extra signage up one road, and I wanted you to put it on your designated camera site. I'm not expecting you to come out very well, so I can put some repeaters out, because the law doesn't let me put repeaters out unless it's on in a designated road. I can't put repeaters out saying it's 30 unless it's in a camera route. So what people are saying is, we didn't know it was 30 because their sat-nav's telling me it's 40, but it's actually 30. But if I could put the repeaters out, it would stop people speeding, but I can't because the law won't allow me. But I think the Safety Road Partnership does a great job. I think we need to watch on the road safety, the road policing team, that due to operational pressures on Staffordshire Police, a lot of the time they're not used to do road safety stuff. They're filling in for the response teams. I mean, I do talk to officers quite a lot, and I know them. I know a lot of the senior officers, and I'm saying, you do a great job, but why aren't we seeing more of you? What you're doing? And it's because they're backfilling response instead of doing road, the team. Because I understand that we went up to 27 officers, a couple of sergeants and an inspector on the road safety teams, but we don't see that many out. Whether that's sustainable now, but that's what it was last year. So keep up the good work. I think, education is good. Parking on the footpath, Charlotte, yeah, we had to do with that 40 years ago when I was in the police. You can't win. We were sent out one night to ticket everybody in this area in Abbots Bromley. We did. There was uproar the next day. All the residents were complaining, and sometimes some roads, it's difficult to choose what to do. If we don't park a little bit on the pavement, we can't get traffic through. If we do park on the pavement, it's difficult for pedestrians and disabled people and blind people. So I do understand that, but it's getting that balance. And if you park fully on the pavement, there is actually an offence of driving across the footpath to get, if you drive across the footpath, that's a traffic offence. If you park on the footpath wholly, then you're causing an unnecessary obstruction. And, you know, so the powers are there. The problem is we don't have the foot patrols now of uniformed police officers that we did have. PCSOs can't issue tickets for lots of things, and our enforcement teams can't be everywhere, and sometimes when the problems are occurring, it's at times when they wouldn't be working. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're really hoping that the collision data will become available more quickly very soon. We know that colleagues at Staffordshire Police are working very hard to resolve the issue. We're supporting them through the partnership and through partners as much as we can. We don't have a specific date for that. They are aware of how important this data is for all of us, so we're hoping that that will be resolved soon. Regarding your comment around the technology, I think that we are moving with the times. We are considering the new risks that are coming up, as you mentioned, with the change of vehicle technology and also vehicle use, things like micromobility that are proving challenging in some ways. And nationally, there's been some changes through the Department for Transport for how collision data gets recorded to make sure that we're capturing some of this new technology that's coming through, so that we can start seeing how it's impacting on safety. So I agree, things are changing, things are always changing or continue to, and we're sort of trying to keep on top of that as much as we can. Regarding the signage, so it is correct that 30-mile-an-hour repeaters can't go up where there's a system of street lighting in place in a 30. The combined camera and 30-mile-an-hour repeater signs can go up in those locations if it's an enforcement route. So if you want to have any conversation separately about the specific locations and whether there's any assessments that we can undertake or if they've already been considered, then I'd be happy to sort of take that offline.
Yeah, I have several times, and it's like banging my head against a brick wall. If it's so, we do a speed watch. We do speed watch in that location. We can give you data. The data you're telling me that refers to that road is incorrect. The data I can give you from my SID signs and from the data that we collect from actually doing speed watch gives a different picture. So I have been trying, and I just get nowhere. I tried again a couple of months ago. I know it's should be out of the meeting, Chair, but I have tried.
Chair, just on that one, if members have an issue with an area just like that, and as Mel says, the rules are quite stringent about what we can and can't do, there is a potential for you to work with your community highways teams to get a temporary trial. We are allowed to put up signs that are temporarily based for several months, and to see if that makes the difference. So that's something that you could work with your community highways teams and maybe fund through your DHPs. But they are different types of signs, and they are temporary in nature and must be removed afterwards. I agree as well with what you said about the fact that vehicles are becoming safer. They're also becoming a lot quicker, and with driving styles and so forth, I think there's a lot more of a blasé attitude because of the safety within the vehicle, so that doesn't help. And again, when it comes to driving styles and driving competencies, very different test to what we took. And obviously coming from an emergency services background as yourself, going through all the advanced stuff, it's very different. I'd encourage that, and I have to say as well that when we do the speed awareness course, I've got to be honest, I have noticed at least 95% of every single person who comes out of there drives very differently because of the way that course is run. It's an exceptional course. It really does work in Staffordshire, and I think that's borne out by those people do not get reoffending very often. So I think that we are putting things there, but there are small trials that you might want to look at doing as a local basis.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. The first one, in a recent report in the media, they were saying that younger people are not taking out insurance because they can't afford it. And I'm aware from police contacts that possibly 1 in 10 drivers in Staffordshire are driving illegally, either no MOT, no licence, no insurance, or in fact all three. So what can the Safer Road... personally, I think those drivers should be stopped and their cars crushed. And that car, because Merseyside did this, Merseyside Police, and it worked very well. So what can we do against illegal drivers? And the second one is we've got the A500 that runs between my constituency and the city of Stoke. And it's got average speed cameras on it. And if you drive up in Scotland, you'll see an awful lot of the A roads have got average speed cameras. And the data that comes back, certainly from Scotland, are where they've got average speed cameras, there are less accidents. So perhaps we've got some major routes running through Staffordshire, not just the M6. We've got lots of routes that we could perhaps have average speed cameras on, which hopefully would reduce accidents. But I'm particularly worried that we have no strategy, and the police seems to have no strategy in dealing with illegal drivers. And I think that's cause for concern, because I think they when I look at the injuries, mostly under 40s, male drivers, are these the people that are uninsured or illegal in some way, and perhaps that's contributing to their reckless driving? Because right down to in fact, the vast majority seems to be careless, reckless driving. Fail to look properly, fail to judge another person's path, careless recklessness, poor turn or manoeuvre, loss of control, exceeding the speed limit. They all seem to me reckless driving. So perhaps you could come back on those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The issue of uninsured drivers, vehicles without MOTs, is something that does sit quite firmly with Staffordshire Police. I'm aware that they do focus on that, and some of the joint operations that we undertake with them, where they stop vehicles, for example, that are exceeding the speed limit, they'll do full checks on them to see if there's any other offences being committed. So I think it is a focus, but I'm sure more could be done. And I agree that there are concerns around possibly an increase in lack of insurance with the increase in costs and other impacts of sort of cost of living. So it is something that I understand is a focus, and is something that the partnership is interested in as well. Regarding average speed cameras, it would be great to get more average speed cameras through the county and the city. It's something that we will be considering as future phases of our digital upgrade strategy progresses. We will need to ensure that they are appropriate roads, that they are appropriate for average speed cameras, and that there is a significant enough collision issue to justify that sort of implementation. Cameras of all types are very expensive, and particularly average speed cameras can be particularly expensive to install. So we, as with any highway scheme, we need to sort of weigh up the most appropriate solution in a location. But we will certainly be considering average speed cameras, and also potentially new locations for spot speed cameras if average speed cameras aren't appropriate. For example, locations where there's lots of side roads where you're not going to have that sort of A to B journey that you can monitor, where average speed cameras really sort of come into their own. So I would say, yeah, we're certainly going to be looking at that and considering where they can be used beneficially.
Just to add to that, obviously average speed cameras are a hell of a lot more expensive than normal cameras due to the monitoring, the maintenance, and the point of the partnership was never ever to just penalise drivers and constantly do a big brother, so that you do it. We have always in this country been able to ensure that people are supposed to drive to the speed limits that we set, and if they don't do that, then they are at risk of damaging, injuring and getting prosecuted. So I think there's a good balance there, that we don't want it as a blanket for everywhere, because what we are also wanting is people to drive sensibly themselves.
Philippa.
Thank you. My question's with regards to the neighbourhood speed checks. I know it was launched in October and you've done 35 roads, was it in November? I wondered how many members actually participated in nominating roads forward for that assessment, and where that information gets fed back from. So after that 35 roads that were done initially, where's that information gone back? Has it gone back specifically just to the highways team, or would it come back to our committee to show what's actually occurred on that road for us to see how it works and what we can do off the back of it?
Up to date, we've assessed 60 locations through that scheme. So I think we provided an update after the first wave, and then we invited some further nominations. I don't have the numbers to hand in terms of how many individual members, and it was the county and the city that were involved. I don't have the individual members that were that did put forward locations. I can provide that information if that would be of interest. The outcome of the assessment was fed back specifically to that local member that raised the issue, so that they could deal with that information and feed that back to their communities who would have raised the issue initially. So we haven't looked at any sort of broader updates of those locations. If it's somewhere that we've progressed, we do let wider teams know if we're going to be setting up enforcement sites or undertaking other activity. But if it's a location that hasn't met criteria, that feedback has just gone back to hopefully reassure the community.
And just again, if local members have concerns over certain roads in their wards, then they can always utilise their DHP with the community teams and get a traffic assessment done anyway, which is just a can. Now the cans are different, and not always the two pieces of wire that go across. They can be put onto street furniture as well, and they are actually able to tell what type and how fast. And so if you want that, it's not a very expensive job to do within your area, and you're quite welcome to look at that through your community highways teams. Thank you.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first say, we've had some experience in my division of the Safer Roads Partnership, and I would like to say thanks very much, because it's worked very well indeed. There's 3 points that I would like to make, really. One is about the upgrading of speed cameras that we've got, and I wonder what sort of long-term effect that's going to have, because a lot more people are going to get caught in speed cameras. Although, to be absolutely honest, I drove up this morning using the motorway, and I suppose I came up at just under 70 miles an hour, and there were very, very few cars that passed me in the outside lane. And so it seems to me that people are conforming to speed restrictions much more than they perhaps did a few years ago. Yesterday, I drove up the A38 where there's some average speed cameras in place, a 40-mile-an-hour limit in a section, and everybody kept to the 40-mile-an-hour limit. It wasn't really some idiot screaming through and ignoring it totally. But particularly what I wanted to mention, we're talking to the police at the moment about recording accidents. The system that we have, and because of our cross-border issues, the speeds which are used to identify accidents and various things by Walsall is actually different to the conditions which we apply, which makes great difficulty, because we're having major issues on the Chester Road, and we're now getting the cooperation of Walsall following the intervention of their leader and a petition that I presented to full council. So we are making some progress. What I hadn't realised, and I don't know whether other members feel the same, but where you've got a cross-border issue and you have a junction leading on to the road which is managed by another authority, the junction is the responsibility of the other authority, although it actually comes within Staffordshire. I never realised that. What I'm concerned about, particularly when you look at recording accidents, because cars are so much safer these days, what might have been a fatal accident now is just the front of the car's got knocked off. and we're pressing the police to do something about a better recording of accidents, not just accidents where there has been blood injuries of some sort. So hopefully, we're making progress, but I have to say, it would be super if it was much faster than we're getting at the moment, but thank you for your help.
Thank you, David. Just a couple of points from myself. Obviously, we mentioned at the start, Mel, that the younger generation are like 18 to 39 is where the accidents happen, predominantly males. And Sam's point about educating children and educating parents, but what do we actually do to educate new drivers? You've just passed your test, you've got your car, you go out in a blaze of glory or whatever, young drivers. And I can use an example from this morning. I was at a set of traffic lights. I've got an electric vehicle, so I've got instant power. I have no gears to change, it just goes. And there was a young lad in his revved up little Corsa, and he kept looking over thinking, I'm going to take her at these lights. Unfortunately, he stalled it, and that didn't happen. So by stalling his vehicle, by revving it too much, he could have caused an accident behind him, because the person behind him could have gone into the back of him. And I see it quite a lot where we've got these, and I don't want to berate young drivers, but I do think once you've passed your test, my dad said, you learn to drive once you've passed your test. And I think everyone in this room is a driver. How lazy are we after, I've been driving 25 years, David's probably been driving double that. You know, how lazy do we get? Not you, David, this David over here. How lazy do we get when we're driving along? You know, you've only got one hand on the wheel. You might only have 2 fingers on the steering wheel. You know, as you get older and you drive more and you do more miles, you tend to forget what your driving instructor taught you. And like everybody said, vehicles are much safer these days. My car will stop if I get too close to the car in front. I'm a good driver, so that never happens. So that's just one point. What are we doing to educate that young 17 just drivers, just passed my test, and they want to go out and drive the vehicle? So that's the first thing. And I think that's something we can do quite easily. Community Speed Watch. I'm a member of Community Speed Watch. We've got 3 locations in my ward, but I find that there's very little support. We let the police know when we're going out, but we never get any police support while we're there. So you get all the 2-finger gestation and everything else. And I think there needs to be more support for members that are doing Speed Watch, and that's got to come from the police. The lockdown figures, and obviously we've only got data until 2021. I think we need some real pressure, and I'm going to suggest as another recommendation that we really pressure Staffordshire Police to get that data, because we're now in 2024, into the 2nd month already, and our data is nearly 3 years out of date. We need that data to be able to form a valued opinion going forward, and I don't think we can do it on 2021 data. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I think as a recommendation, if I can get some support, that needs to be pushed further. And just on the driver speed awareness, it does work. My husband had to do a speed awareness course a couple of years ago, and now he will be driving along and I say, oh, it's national speed limit now, you can go. And he'll go, no, you can't do 70 until you've gone past the sign, because it's still 40 until you get there. So he's learned a valued lesson that you can't just put your foot down as soon as you see the national speed limit sign come up. You've got to wait until you've actually passed the sign to do it. So educating him not to speed has actually worked. And the only other thing I was going to say is, when you do Speed Watch as well, and you have your roads assessed, you can have 30-mile-an-hour bin stickers that are issued by Staffordshire Police, and they're fantastic. Your bin goes out once a week, and everybody along a row of houses has got a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sticker on their bin, and it works because people look and go, oh, it's 30 along here. It actually does work. We've questioned some drivers when we've done an assessment of how those bin stickers work. So just more comments from me, really, but I think the first one about looking at those newly passed drivers and how we can educate them that, you know, you can't just put your foot down and do whatever speed you feel.
Thank you, Chair. There are quite a few streams of work that we put in around pre and young drivers through the partnership. So we engage at schools and colleges with those that are perhaps coming up to the point of starting to drive or ride motorcycles to try and get that road safety focus in them early before they actually start learning and start going out on the roads. We've got support for parents and carers who might be mentoring young drivers, so we have a website with a lot of resources to support them to ensure that they've got a focus on road safety. And we've been trialling some work with the Honest Truth, which is a national initiative, which is where driving instructors can sign up to the Honest Truth, so that as well as teaching the young people to drive, they're also bringing road safety more into those lessons than they would if they were just a normal driving instructor. So we're having a look at how that can potentially impact on new driver safety as well. And we do have other young driver events, evening events, where they can come along to a fire station and we go through some road safety information. They get some practical support with how you look after your car, how you make sure your car's safe. We developed an interactive hazard perception resource which is used within the pods that the fire service have, the interactive pods that young people can go into. So there's quite a lot going on already. I agree there's still too many young people being involved in collisions, and we'll continue to look at developing and working more in that area as much as we're able to. Did you want me to respond on any of the other points, or was it mainly that one? No. Yeah, thank you.
Mainly just the comments in support, really. Philip, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just before you did on that, just as an aside, if you look at the way that the tests go, if you can afford it, you can have whatever vehicle you want from a car. But when you're on a motorcycle, it's very different, and they actually limit it for a while. Something that people might want to lobby MPs on at looking at, because if you were talking about having the smaller, more restrictive vehicles, but I know obviously the insurance and that does cause obvious issues for a lot of them, but it is something that they've done for motorcycles, but they don't seem to have done at all for cars.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a bit more information, basically about motorcyclists, because that's more what I'm interested in. So Staffordshire Police run a bike safe course that you can go on. You can either have a one-to-one or you can have two riders. So they'll take you out after you've passed your test, do an assess ride with you, and then give you some feedback on how you can improve your riding. Prosperous and the IAM will take people on as soon as they've passed the test, and will train them up to advanced level. So that's very good. We have bikers' breakfasts in Staffordshire. There's about 4 a year where motorcyclists of all ages and that can go. And there's a lot of the training people now do burger nights in the week. So there's a lot out there for young motorcyclists and older motorcyclists, because we find that a lot of people who come back to riding motorcycles in their 50s and 60s who haven't ridden for a bit, and they're just as vulnerable as the youngsters. So there is a lot going on. Perhaps there could be a bit more for car drivers, but I know certainly there's a lot for bikers. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's my point. There seems to be plenty out there for motorcyclists, and you're limited to 125, is it, when you first pass your test? I'm not sure. But you pass your test, and if you can afford to go out and buy a great big massive gas guzzling Range Rover, then and afford the insurance, there's nothing to stop you driving that. So I think there needs to be some lobbying, as David says, around you pass your test and you should only be able to drive something up to a 1 litre, 990 cc's or something. So if there's no further comments or questions, we have got 2 recommendations on here: to scrutinise the operation of Staffordshire Safer Roads Partnership and agree the strategic objectives and key performance metrics, and to consider what further scrutiny might be required having regard to findings under recommendation A above. So I think we've had quite a good valued discussion, and there's been some great points raised. And maybe, David, you can take away that one about lobbying about younger drivers driving smaller vehicles when they first pass the test, and we can perhaps work on that afterwards. So all those in favour? Oh, and of course, yes, really pressure the recommendation C is to, if somebody wants to second it, is to really push to get that up-to-date data and bring it back to us as soon as you've got it. So I'll look for a seconder on that one. Thank you, Philip. All those in favour of that added recommendation? Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll move swiftly on to item 5, which is the Highways Transformation Progress and Performance Quarterly Update. David, James and David.
Thank you, Chair. This is the 10th update to the Select Committee on the Highways Transformation Programme. Since October, we have been continuing to make progress on the delivery of our extra investment in road maintenance, the development of the new contract functional specifications using the template that this committee provided with useful feedback on back in July. Moving forward, we are with the customer journey and members offer improvements, as well as lots of other behind-the-scenes transformation activity to support the new ways of working. The winter months have always been challenging, and this winter it's particularly true, especially with the amount of water that we've had and the 10 named storms that we've already had land on us. And I'm very grateful both to the frontline operational teams who have responded brilliantly for every challenge, and not least the storm and snow events over the Christmas period, but to all the staff who work alongside them in these daily challenges, continues to push on with our ambitions for transformation. I'm going to hand over to James and David in a second, who are going to present the key highlights of the progress that's been made over the last 3 months. But as always, I'll be most grateful for your feedback on the overall programme, particularly any first-hand experiences that you may have had, which we can use to help further shape and inform the ongoing transformation programmes, both positive and negative. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, the slides worked, so that's the first start. It's always the big risk, pressing that button. As Councillor Williams has said, excuse me, this is the 10th verbal quarterly update to Select Committee on the Highways Transformation Programme. Amongst other things, previous updates have covered the scope and the governance arrangements for the programme, the key priorities and enablers of the programme, design of the future delivery model that we're in the process of transitioning to and which becomes fully operational from October of this year, and of course the case for the extra investment strategy. With all of that context in mind, today's update reports on the progress of the key 3 priorities of the programme, which we're focused on now, which is that operational delivery and the investment in fixing more roads, improving the customer journey and improving the support made available to local members. So I will hand over to David Walters, who will start us off on that update. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Chair and Councillor Williams. Yes, so my first element is operational delivery, which is mainly focused around the extra investment, but also I think quite useful to just reflect on not just the additional investment, but a lot of the work that we do day to day. There is a significant amount of work going on the network, whether it is structural maintenance, preventative maintenance, cycling, walking, and developer-led activity. Structural maintenance-wise, members will recall at the last transformation report in September, the update then was that we had completed 9 resurfacing or reconstruction schemes. There were a further 4 nearing completion, and there were 12 at that time undergoing design and investigation. So by the end of the 2023 calendar year, we'd completed 18 sites. We paused over Christmas, over December, to make sure we could keep the network clear during that key trading period and avoid having temporary traffic management in place over Christmas with no obvious works taking place, which we know is a source, obviously, of frustration to our highway users. The majority of the County Council funded structural maintenance schemes were completed in 2023, with the remaining 2 scheduled for delivery in the first quarter of this calendar year, together with the balance of schemes which are funded by the Department for Transport Pothole Fund. We started 2 of those sites in January, including the A511 Horninglow Road North in Burton-upon-Trent, which has actually been extended as a result of the extra Network North funding that the department announced in October 2023. And we've also started the A52 Ashbank at Warrington. You might have also seen, if you've got schemes in your area coming ahead, that we've been out and about carrying out investigation works such as coring, where we take cores of the existing road construction to help with the design, and doing works to check out drainage systems and make sure that before we resurface, the drainage systems are working okay. The traditional surface-based preventative maintenance treatment programme was successfully delivered before the end of the season into September, October, and that included the extra sites that we did. I think we did around 400 sites last year. I think there's one site that we had to push back because we couldn't coordinate it with other activity. We'll pick that up this year. And the only area that we were not able to complete for preventative was some micro asphalt treatment, which the unusually wet season in autumn meant that that got delayed, and so we are looking to restart that again. As soon as the weather gets a bit warmer, we will restart that again and complete that in the early part of 2024. The last part of this slide, the repairing places pilot. So that was a pilot to look at repairing places rather than defects, so doing multiple repairs on the same street at the same time, whether that be carriageway, footway, curbing, ironwork, and secondly, carrying out larger patching repairs at one visit. That's now concluded. We are preparing a report on that, and that will be considered by the Highway Transformation Board at the March meeting, and that will look at how that could be rolled out and scaled up, what that would mean operationally, and what extra investment would be required. So I'd now like to take you through a selection of the schemes that we've completed since our last update. They're in no particular order, no particular preference. They don't represent all the schemes that we've completed, but I'll start with structural maintenance scheme in Burton-upon-Trent, which was the exit entry slips onto the A38. Carries about 22,000 vehicles a day, so significant impact upon traffic, and we've had to very carefully fit that in the programme in advance of other works in Burton-upon-Trent, such as A511 Horninglow Road, which I mentioned earlier on. Branston Interchange, significant investment in that area, which affects the southern junction on and off the A38, and the forthcoming Derby Road maintenance scheme, which is also due to go on the ground later this year. Mill Street, Cannock, this was £560,000 worth of work funded through the Levelling Up 2 scheme, which we were successful in bidding for. It was completed in November 2023. It's part of a package of Luff 2 works taking place in Stafford, Cannock and sections of the road corridor between. You'll notice on a lot of these photos, the photos are taken at night. A lot of our key operations where we have to close the road do take place in the evenings and overnight so that we can minimise the disruption. We're using a lot of large plant, a lot of large equipment, so obviously we need to make sure the crews and other highway users are safe. Similarly, a drone view of A518 Bamford Bridge, Bridge Street, Uttoxeter, taken after completion. £400,000 funded through the DFT pothole fund, and again you can see the resurfacing taking place on the right hand side during an evening to minimise the disruption to traffic. Looking in the north of the county, refurbishing works to the A53 Broad Street Leak, main entranceway into the town. 15,000 vehicles per day, again, pretty heavily used route. Lots of people seeing that we're doing the work on there. That was completed again in the autumn. Around about £250,000 worth of work funded through the DFT pothole fund there. As I said, as well as delivering the investment, there's a significant amount of other works that we do across the network. And I've just picked a selection of these, I think, as much as anything to emphasise the diversity of the network that we look after. So we've gone from some large structural maintenance schemes on key gateway routes into town centres and at key junctions. At the other extreme, we manage routes such as Swan, it should say Lima, not Rymer, Swan, Lima and Joe Rakes in Hollinsclough, which has been closed for a number of years due to vehicle damage. It's an unsurfaced route. It was being washed away. There was a risk of legal challenge over it being closed. But it's just a useful reminder of the diversity of the 6,000 kilometres of roads that we maintain and look after across Staffordshire. Integrated Transport Scheme, new cycleway on Station Street, Borough Road, Burton-upon-Trent, completed September 2023. Again, funded through a combination of partners, County Council, East Staffordshire Borough Council and the cycling charity Sustrans, and that's part of a wider investment in that town on cycling and walking and active travel. Landywood Lane, Junctions, Cheslin Hay, something not quite different. One of the things that our contract with Amy allows us to do is to offer a design and build solution for highway works, which allows developers to get on the ground quicker. It gives us better assurance over the timing of the work, the quality of the work, the design of the work. It's a great offer for Staffordshire, and it also helps to support some of our wider overheads across our highway team. And that's just one example of that. We do multiple of those activities in a year. Probably links later on as well. There's some comments about value for money. That will have been, in effect, awarded to us by the developer because they recognise that we are delivering a value for money solution. They could go out to open tender on that. They've actually awarded it to us. And in many cases, we do tender for them and we win them in open competition. I-54 Plot D, no roads being built on there at the moment, but this is the earthworks to enable further development of the I-54 plot. It's an extension of the site. There was utility diversion works, large diameter drainage installation and earthworks to get the site ready for future phases. So we've also got a number of other schemes going on in the County Council at the moment. These are ones that were live or had recently finished when I drafted the report. Chatterley Valley Enterprise Zone, that's a Section 278 development. The original contractor went into administration, which caused delay in the delivery of the scheme. Our highway team were able to quickly step into discussions with the developer. Again, we were awarded the contract on a value for money criteria. We've got on site and continuing the works, and once fully built out, 1,700 jobs are expected to be supported once that development's completed. Right at the other kind of end of what we do, on a smaller but no less important scale, an example of one of the many smaller activities that we carried out. This is a drainage works in the village of Standon, about 4 miles to the northwest of Eccleshall. Narrow lanes and highway drainage have broken up over time. We've got flooding becoming a major issue. We laid a new 300mm pipe across the field, 50 metres in the carriageway, new gullies, new drainage system. Took about 5 weeks and we completed that in mid-November. Swainsley Bridge, an example of the kind of activities that appear without too much notice. So this bridge, it had collapsed through a combination of water pressure, a falling tree, and the age of the structure. It was closed whilst we did investigation works. We've subsequently done some repair and reconstruction works on it, and again, that was reopened in November. We look after about 1,500 structures across the county. Again, you know, we often focus on the carriageway and the pavement and the footways. We've got 1,500 structures ranging from large-scale structures now like the Stafford Western Access Route to St Peter's Bridge and Burton Bridge across the county. We've got some significant structures that we look after. Active travel, a scheme in Stafford, completed on time ahead of Christmas, or phase 1 of it was completed. Again, the aim was to complete it before Christmas to make sure that the Stafford Town Centre was open for business. We're back on site now, starting works on the other side of the carriageway, on the westbound side of the carriageway, and obviously we'll take those through to completion over the next few months. Gallows Tree Roundabout, Newcastle under Lyme, that was to improve pedestrian and cycling access. Completed in November, including commissioning of a crossing. The roundabout works were aimed at improving walking and cycling connections between Keele University and Stoke Railway Station, and was funded by Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council through the government's town deal. And again, we were chosen to do the design and do the delivery of that through that deal which the Borough Council led on. Again, quite at the smaller end of the scheme, public footpath number 4. We don't just do work for highways, we do works for public rights of way. It was coordinated by our public rights of way team, carried out by our highway crews, about £35,000 worth of work. It's an important footpath between a new housing development and the railway station. There was a stone path which you can see in the top left-hand corner, quite overgrown in places. We've put an improved surface in place to give better and improved and safer journeys for pedestrians and wheelchair or mobility users all year round. Towpath work between Kings Bromley and Fradley Junction, quite an unusual one. The materials, as you can see on the bottom left photograph, were brought to site from a local compound on canal barges, as was any material that was taken away. Quite an interesting one and an unusual one. They weren't horse-drawn, they were motorised, but quite an unusual one to do. That was funded by HS2, about 3 kilometres of length. It took about 6 months to complete, and we carefully worked around the season for the canal boaters. Norton Keynes Library, again, not just doing highway work, this was a flood risk management scheme. The library had suffered flooding incidents over recent years. £58,000 worth of flood mitigation measures were carried out there. You can see on the right-hand side, we used a new kind of measure which is in effect is buried beneath the ground, and it provides extra capacity, on top of which we can plant, and we have planted. We can improve the biodiversity, groundwater quality, and most importantly, reduce the flood risk to the library. And the last one, which you'll have all seen lots of media coverage about, hopefully, since the highway team took delivery of the JCB Pothole Pro in July. I think these photographs are at the scheme on the A522, which is outside the factory. It's been used at various locations across the county, carrying out both routine repairs and preventative pre-patching, big part of our preventative maintenance programme, and it's on target to repair up to 14,000 square metres of road before the end of March. Again, big part of our extra investment is being delivered through that machine or similar machines. Operational performance, quite a lot of detail in here. I think I would just kind of emphasise it's been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge, I think, over the last few months. We've seen 10 named storms this year hit the area compared to 2 last year. That's had a significant impact on operational activity. Crews literally have been going from dealing with flooding to high winds to pothole damage to winter maintenance, and back around that loop several times over the last few months. It is the same people doing the same activities. You know, they can be filling potholes in the daytime and then driving the gritters in the evening and in the morning. We have made some changes to repair types. We've been doing some holding repairs over the last few weeks, so you might see that happening in your area to make sure that we are able to carry on and deliver the repairs to the high risk defects within our target times, and we have put additional crews in place for the remainder of the current financial year to cope with the extra demand. Drainage wise, again, drainage, there's been a big impact on our drainage systems. Lots of our roads actually don't have any positive drainage. By that I mean gullies and pipe work. They run along the side of roads, or the water runs into ditches or ditch courses. Our gully emptying programme, we've been targeting leaving more of our gullies emptied and running at the first visit. We are now achieving that for over 93% of the gullies that we visit. However, adverse weather, increased escalations, and the longer time that we are spending at certain locations to achieve that has had a negative impact on the planned programme, and we are again bringing some extra resource in for February and March whilst the benefits of the current method of working are reviewed. Customer wise, I'm sure you've seen it with your correspondence and emails. We've seen an over 50% increase in the number of enquiries this year we had over 40,000 customer enquiries come into the inspection team last year, which compares to around 30,000 the previous year. January's broken another record, over 6,000 enquiries in January. I think our previous highest was just over 5,000. I'll come back onto that in a short while in terms of claims and why do we think that's happening. We often get asked about the way quality of work's managed across the highway service. We've got a range of measures which I've outlined on the slide, ranging from our specification that we have for highway works, which is built off national specifications but adapted for Staffordshire. We have our highway laboratory, carry out testing of materials. We're one of the few highway authorities in the country that has a highway laboratory. The real value of the highway laboratory is the advice that they are able to give us, whether that's new materials, whether that's testing of materials. It's quite interesting sometimes sitting in when there's conversations between our laboratory and materials suppliers, for example. Certainly goes way over my head, but it's a real good example of, I'm not quite sure how other highway authorities without that technical expertise are able to hold those material suppliers to account. We've brought a clock of works into our own team to support the quality of the additional investment. The compliance officer that we have in the highway maintenance team that was focused on repairing places is now back on compliance activities, and we continue to increase the amount of inspections that our traffic and network management inspectors do. That's what we do from our own side. Amy's own quality management system is quite extensive, and as Councillor Williams mentioned earlier on, part of our functional management approach and reviewing our functional specifications for work activity. One of the plans that we are preparing for that at the moment is an update to our quality management requirements and improving the visibility of all the various activities that we do, whether it's ourselves or Amy or through our other supply chains. Issues do arise. We can have repairs carried out in life expired roads which fail, seasonal timing of works, trying to put material in waterlogged potholes at this time of year is always going to be a challenge. So wet or cold conditions can compromise those materials. Overall, the quality scorecards do remain positive, but where issues do occur, we will investigate them and opportunities for improvement are identified and remediated where required. If you've got any examples of issues, please do email us. We will get our compliance officer out to have a look at them. So please do let us know. You know, you are our eyes and ears on the ground. We can't be everywhere, so we do welcome that information being provided to us. Yeah, just going to say, but you will see some of the repairs we're doing at the moment are what we call holding repairs. So where we would go out and cut and break a nice patch, at the moment we're not in some cases because we're focusing on making sure we do those higher risk repairs. We will come back, but at the moment you will see some holding repairs. Value for money, similarly a question we often get asked. How do we demonstrate value for money across our supply chain? So I've given you the example, for example, earlier on where we do win as a service works competitively with developers. That is one way of making sure that we test are competitive through our own supply chain. Amy, they are a large UK-based, and I'm not sure whether they are international now or not, but they are UK-based now. They used to be part of an international group. There is competition through their supply chain. For example, structural maintenance schemes, resurfacing, those elements are not delivered direct by Amy, but they are procured through a competitive process by Amy. And they often represent a significant part of a structural maintenance scheme. Buying power of a large company, they're buying at scale. We get the benefits of that purchasing power of buying tens of thousands of tons of material, for example. We do get reduced overheads compared to the individual procurement of schemes. Certainly when I first started at Staffordshire, if we were doing a structural maintenance scheme, it would be individually tendered. There's a cost to doing that. There's a cost of staff time doing that, and the staff that we had at that time there was a significantly greater number because we were doing individual procurement on schemes, scheme by scheme. There's time to assess that, write the tender, do the checks with the contractor, etc. All of which, by doing it through a tier 1 provider as we do, it helps to reduce our overheads. Target costs for schemes are reviewed by county council staff. We do challenge them. We do challenge those costs down. Big flexibility in our partnership is our ability to respond. We've had some significant changes over recent years in investment, including in year. Our delivery partners have been able to respond very rapidly, and our larger schemes and programmes do get additional best value scrutiny. Might have touched on this before. Future Highway Research Group and Adept, they did a value for money review in 2021, which helped with our early conversations around the transformation. It concluded that our costs are well managed and Staffordshire County Council delivers good value for money and compares well to the Future Highway Research peer group, which, for example, does include a large number of other shire counties that are similar to ourselves. Despite that, we have got new contract arrangements from October 24. They are giving us a strengthened client capability and, as described earlier on, we'll get further increased transparency through the functional specifications and the annual plans to give further assurance on that value for money. Claims, definitely affected by weather. 2,900 new claims received in 2023. Compared to 1,428 in 2022. Claims have doubled, and they are rising still in January. I think we're now over at 600, just ended January, there's 600 in the system. Significant pressure on the claims and inspection teams due to that, and we're working with both our own internal risk team and our external insurance teams to try and understand the reasons and deal with that more than twice the volume. Why do we think that's happening? We've repaired more defects than ever this year. The work stack has reduced, but I think what we're seeing certainly from the smaller claims, and a lot of these are property damage, so cars that have damaged a tyre or damaged the wheel. There's lots of national and media focus at the moment about investment. There's lots of media attention, such as National Pothole Day. Staffordshire got featured very, very largely in the West Midlands news item a few weeks ago. There's pressure on cost of living. People may not have bothered in the past claiming for a £100 tyre, probably are now doing so. We have seen an increase in higher risk defects. We've seen that significant increase in named storms at having an impact. And we think they are all factors that are contributing to this increase. I say it's odd because actually more defects are being repaired. We've repaired more defects this year than for a number of years, and we've seen the work stack reduce because of the extra investment. We're not alone in these operational challenges. Other authorities, including neighbouring authorities, are experiencing similar. In fact, in some cases, without digging behind the figures, are probably seeing higher levels of demand in defects and claims than we are. So turning on to looking ahead to next year, the initial headline, County Council will be investing, subject to Cabinet approval, and the MTFS and full council, a further £50 million in highway capital maintenance over the next 3 years. So that will be going to Cabinet on the 20th of March. That will include a mix similar to this year of capital renewal schemes focused on key gateways, key junctions, a further enhanced preventative maintenance programme. So not only will we be doing extra surface treatments, we'll obviously be doing more repairs on those roads in advance, which will deal with defects and potholes, and we will continue with extra money going into pothole repairs themselves and drainage improvements. That includes 3.188 million from the Network North funding, which is a result of the cancellation of HS2 north of Birmingham. and we are expecting a further 180 million announced over the following 9 years. Don't know the profile on that yet, but obviously as soon as we know the profile, we can start looking at what that means in terms of scheme delivery. And there's also another £5.9 million of levelling up fund structural maintenance projects on the network between Stafford and Cannock that we've yet to deliver. It's not all capital. We're making some changes as well to our day-to-day activity. We are increasing the number of urban grass cuts in highway areas from 6, which is our current base, up to 8. We'll start that with an early cut in March, subject to the weather, and then there'll be a further 7 cuts throughout the season. We're also continuing with the increase of our routine weed control treatments. They will remain at 3, which is what we've done this year, and we're looking at new environmental maintenance team resource, which will be able to focus on some of the lower risk, what we'd see as lower priority from a safety point of view, but are really, really important to customers and highway users. And that sense of place on our local network, and that really is what the grass cutting and the weeds and the environmental teams are about. Last from me, functional management approach. Again, we've referred to that earlier on. So this is part of the transformation, and it's to provide improved service information that describe the highway services that we deliver, and then where they are delivered through our supply chain, to have an improved annual delivery plan which sets out how that will be achieved during that year, with value for money wrapped into that, with customer, with improved performance management information. We're breaking it down into a number of phases. The first 2 phases are focused on the services that are delivered through the contract with Amy. That's to get us in the position that at the start of the contract extension in October 2024, we have all those documents in place and signed off. The process of governance for those is they will go through our strategic partnership operations board to start off with, which is assistant directors, heads of service, and similarly for our delivery partner Amy, and then they will be signed off by the Highway Strategic Partnership Board, which again is part of that contract governance, and Councillor Williams, Councillor DeVille, Councillor White, Councillor Pritchard, they are all part of that, along with Amy senior directors. So there's quite a lot of scrutiny and governance around that to make sure they are right, they are fit for purpose. And then once we've signed them off, they will be monitored very closely as we go through the year. As I say, the first phase covers operational activities such as grass cutting, drainage, carriageway and footway patching. The second phase covers the remaining services delivered through the contract, including, for example, design services. So if you're having works commissioned, for example, through the Divisional Highway Programme, and they at the moment are going through the design team, that's where that will be captured. And then there is a third phase, which we're just going to pause then, once we've done the second phase, and review how much detail and how much further we need to go with other highway services that we deliver. I think that's it from me. I've got to hand back to James now.
That was the bulk of the presentation. There was a lot of detail in there, a lot of value, obviously, a lot of operational activity in that space. I've just got a few more slides to cover the remaining 2 items of the transformation programme. So moving on to the second key priority is the customer journey improvements, which are also progressing very, very well. So just to say on this one, we've got the customer service improvement workstream has been led by the subject matter expert, who's Emily Dorbar, who I'm sure many of you will know, who's the Council's Corporate Customer Services Manager. We've got a customer experience feedback tool that has now been operational for about 6 months, and that's capturing customer feedback specifically on highway defect reporting. On a journey of highway defect reports, which of course is the kind of main point of contact for most of the highway service. And that survey asks a series of questions at the time when the defect is first reported, and then again when the report is closed down, because hopefully the reported defect has been repaired and dealt with, or maybe it's been closed off for another reason, perhaps if there is no defect, or it's not an actionable defect, or perhaps on third-party land or another authority or so on. but either way when it's been closed down, so you get a before and after set survey. And the questions it asks are things like how easy was it to make your inquiry, were you kept informed along the way of that sort of customer journey, how satisfied are we with the outcome in terms of the speed of response, possibly quality and so on. And largely as a result of the extra investment, we've seen quite a marked increase, as you can see there, or an improvement, should I say, in that satisfaction. Both in terms of seeing the sort of reasons and trends why areas of dissatisfaction might exist, slowly reducing, but likewise also areas of why satisfaction might be improving, areas where you've got good satisfaction, we're seeing it starting to improve there. So the obvious ultimate goal there is that the red line and the green line would eventually cross over and we'd have more people satisfied than we have dissatisfied. That's obviously the aim. Sort of very importantly though, I think the detail that sits behind those customer responses is providing the insight that also helps inform the changes for the future customer journey improvement programme. So for example, it'll highlight systems and procedures where we could improve things to make that customer journey better. It'll identify operational activities that may require more or possibly less investment than what we do now, so we can adjust budgets, subject of course to the usual sign-off processes and so on. And that could be, you know, are we spending enough on potholes relative to drainage, or are we spending enough on drainage compared to tree management and that type of activity. So getting that customer insight to help understand those kind of operations and activities. And then we can monitor the progress through that, and that change of budget will then go back into the functional plans that David's just mentioned under the new contract operating model, which will then define what the new service levels are and what the new key performance indicators are required for that functional activity, and then we can monitor the progress of that service. In parallel, the customer journey working group's also exploring now other areas that we could extend this customer experience tool to expand it out to other areas of the service. As I say, at the moment it's very focused upon when someone's reported an actual operational highway defect or coming in through the kind of report it mechanism. But of course we engage with customers through loads of other means, whether that's, you know, communicating on delivery of capital schemes or carrying out consultations for local traffic management changes, that type of activity where we've got other interfaces. So we're trying to extend whether we can, or identify areas where we can extend that contact point and understand that feedback. So many of the customer service improvements will be enabled by providing access to better and more timely information. On the 10th of January, the Strategic Board overseeing and steering the Highway Transformation Programme has signed off a business case to procure a new customer relations management solution called Community Central. That's been developed by software developer Brightly, and it will basically provide a direct interface with our existing highway management system, Confirm. So it's a CRM system that links directly into our key highway information asset management systems. And the key benefits of that are both internal and external, in that it provides more information to customers directly, for example, available to forward highway investment programs, so you can see it on a map and it's very easy to see before you know, if you're reporting a pothole, if you can see that there's planned maintenance on that road this summer, then that's quite a useful, hopefully wouldn't deter you from reporting the defect if it was a safety matter, but help inform anyway that we're aware of it and we've got plans in place and programs of activity to deal with that. But it also improves the sort of inquiry processing experience internally for our colleagues, officers and members, helping to manage our workloads more efficiently and effectively as well. And work is now starting to develop on to help format and prioritise the data sets that will be used to inform the development of that new CRM system, with that initial capability expected to be available in the summer through phase 1. So just in terms of those phases, I won't go into great detail, I'm sure you can read the content of the slides yourself. But the phase 1 will provide a number of improvements that will have been identified and prioritised from that 6-month data of the customer experience tool that I've just referred to, also triangulated from feedback previously provided by this committee, and of course from the annual member satisfaction surveys. And it does include things like the ability to be able to report multiple defects, which I know we've discussed here many times, and being able to report defects against individually plotted assets, such as gullies and streetlights, which I remember, Chair, you specifically had a point about that some months ago. And customers will also be able to see details, as I say, I've already mentioned about the planned sort of surfacing programs and other maintenance activities, so they'll be able to understand what's going on before they report certain defects. Phase 2, it's pretty much the continuation of the same program, but it just starts to get into more granular detail. So reporting against a wider range of specific asset types or providing visibility on a broader range of routine operations, planned maintenance programs and improvement projects. And again, likewise, phase 3, again, further granular detail. So if I give an example of that, at the moment, or in the first phase, if you're interested in grass cutting in a particular town or village, you can access grass cutting programs, but it's nothing more really than just a schedule of a window of time when the grass cutting is likely in that town or village. Whereas in time in the future, what we'll have is specific verge areas, say a polygon on a map that is very specific in terms of its area, but also providing bespoke details of what the specification of that grass cut might be. It may be that it's a future wildflower mix to promote biodiversity. It could be a sustainable urban drain system or something different that's got a different maintenance regime than a standard highway verge. And you'd be able to see that information directly, as also, together with also further information about who might be managing that verge. It may be delivered through a borough district council or a parish council to give that sort of information. So ultimately that's the goal, to get to that sort of granular level of information that's available. So that's the customer, and then the final element of the priority programme is the members' offer. So the 12 priorities, again identified from previous feedback from this committee, the member survey results, Cabinet and the Strategic Board. They've grouped into those 3 themes, which are colour-coded there. So we've got in blue theme 1, which is more information and guidance available for members. Theme 2, which is supporting members with prompt local support, essentially. And then in the salmon colour there, we've got theme 3, which is a timely delivery of member priorities. And of those 12 priorities that are listed there, 9 are now in place or ongoing, such as the member training events, which we've had, I think, 2 of now. We've done the pothole session, the winter session. We've got drainage coming up next. They are either operational and continue to be refined or developed. Also things like the 2-tick escalation process. And then there are 3 that are held as possible future further faster options, subject to review and whether or not further funding may be needed or available in the future. I think a particular interesting one on there, I'd say some of these things are incremental. So the Divisional Highway Programme one in the salmon colour there is quite an interesting one, I'm sure for all members. We'll be delivering that in incremental phases of improvement. So in the very short term, the kind of here and now, the Community Highways team trying to support members by advising how to prioritise solutions that avoid the kind of slower bureaucratic processes, and we can get on with stuff that we can deliver on the ground and make tangible difference to address local challenges, and sort of avoid those things that require maybe public consultation or land acquisition that are just going to take a long time no matter what. Then in the medium term, we've got the establishment of a dedicated team to perhaps be able to progress some of the local solutions. And then longer term, by October, as David's mentioned, the functional plan for the design services will include increased specification and tighter key performance measures around delivery of local members' priorities. Communications, sorry, I'm coming towards the end now, I'm conscious of time. It isn't one of the key delivery priorities in itself, but it is a key enabler of the Highway Transformation Programme. Again, it's something that's been mentioned at this committee several times in the past. It's a big indicator, or a big influencer, should I say, around customer satisfaction and being able to support local members in their local roles. It includes things like responding to, obviously, local media inquiries, like we've recently had the National Pothole Day, proactively sharing information about what the Council's Highways team is doing, but not just what it's doing, why it's doing it, where it's doing it, when it's doing it. That type of information is really key. Equally, sometimes why we're not doing something, or why we're doing things in a certain way. So again, for example, it's been mentioned this morning about the need to be carrying out some temporary holding repairs whilst we're coping with huge volumes of work until we get to the main road repair season. So in summary, we're trying to send out the message that we are aware of the challenges and issues that affect people in their day-to-day lives and activities on the local road network. We absolutely do care. Sorry, I should have moved that slide on. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, albeit we simply can't do everything all the time, all at once. The table provides some key performance information over the last couple of months. We've got the January data now, which is pretty much a consistent picture, and overall does give us the confidence that we are getting an overall a positive media coverage. I mean, I think we all probably focus on the negative ones, and those are the ones that stick in our mind. But overall, we do get quite a positive media coverage, both locally, and that is a positive trend is being maintained. And then we do also, internal communications are of course also important, providing that clear vision and case for the transformation programme to support our staff and help that resilience as we go through the change, driving forward the new ways of working, and of course helping keep local members updated on the progress as we go. And then the very final slide, if the clicker works. So the Highways Transformation Programme is, of course, remains a top priority for the County Council. It's not without its challenges, but overall, each of the 3 key transformation deliverables are progressing well. The extra investment in particular is having a positive impact. We're seeing that through helping improve operational response and delivery times, despite all the challenges we're seeing in terms of climate change and obviously decades of underinvestment in the asset. We're seeing a marked change in improving on customer satisfaction, where in the areas where we're measuring it, and we're also facilitating an improved members offer. There's still lots more to do, but under the stewardship of the Transformation Strategic Board, we're confident we're heading in the right direction and making good progress. So, thank you. I'll leave that on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. There's a lot to take in there on that update, but really good and really pleasing that we are green going forwards. I'm delighted that Councillor Conor Wildman's here this morning, and I'm going to let him go first because he might not want to sit through the rest of the meeting. So, Conor, do you want to ask your questions first that you've come for this morning?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to sit on the committee today, and hello to the team. There are a number of issues I think that this report suggests that there is some improvement, I think, from where we have been in the past. And I think we can feel that in the way that, especially there are a number of structural maintenance schemes now coming online, which perhaps many years ago you wouldn't have seen any of that sort of activity taking place. So with that, there is some positives, but obviously it's a scrutiny committee, so we need to drill down into some of the detail. First point would be, if someone could put the value for money slide up, that would be great. And then we'll go through. Good stuff, thank you. So there are a number of things that we are doing to try and ensure value for money in relation to structural maintenance schemes. And within that, you can see that it says Stafford County Council delivers good value for money, essentially comparing well to the FHRC peer group. That presumably was data from 2021, is that correct? Yeah, okay. So between then and now, we've had a huge amount of inflation. So the potential costs of delivering structural maintenance schemes may have hugely increased since 2021. Is there any work that is going to take place within the next 6 to 12 months that looks again at the value for money of our structural maintenance schemes? Because one of the things that residents bring up with me when they see the value of these schemes that we've just put on the screen is, how the hell can it cost that much? So I'm here to ask you that question. Can we see the data from our peer groups to suggest whether we are genuinely getting value for money or not on structural maintenance schemes? So I'll ask that question first and then go through a couple more, if that's okay too.
So the FHRG review looked at the service overall, so it didn't just include structural maintenance. It's part of that wider package. It went right the way through, for example, from how many people are employed in the county council team, how many people are in the delivery team, what's the customer, what's the effectiveness, what's the efficiency. So there was a range of measures that we look at. We were pretty well towards the top. I think actually they were quite surprised when we did that at how close we were to the top with how lean a team we've got. And it was like, how are you doing that with such a lean team? But we were up there. Now we will do that again. I think we'll probably do that again, not this year, but next year. Drilling down into the structural maintenance, big part of the structural maintenance, for example, half the cost of a structural maintenance scheme could be the resurfacing element of it. The resurfacing elements are delivered through AMI as the tier 1 provider, but they are subcontractors, what we call a tier 2 provider. So those providers, they are procured competitively. So it might not just be for a single scheme. We might package up a number of structural maintenance schemes and they are delivered through a procurement process competitively from AMI. So we get a large amount of assurance on that, and I say that is often a large part. That's the materials and the laying of those materials. That's often a large part of our structural maintenance schemes. We are hoping this year there is a benchmarking process that we used to do through the Midlands Highway Regional Alliance, which takes data from various authorities for structural maintenance schemes and does a comparison. It's a challenge to do like for like, but we kind of break it down to a level, and historically we performed really well on that. We are going to do that again this year to give us that extra assurance. We continue to challenge target costs, for example, that we are given from AMI costs for schemes. Again, one of the things we're looking at in terms of the future investment is because we've got even more money to deliver. We will need some additional capacity in the team again to deliver those extra schemes, but we're also going to look at whether some of that capacity is for us to have, for example, our own quantity surveyor, which will give us, again, an even more strengthened commercial capability within our own team to be able to check that that's carrying out. There's a lot of the costs in structural maintenance, for example, are associated with other activities. Traffic management is a significant cost for a structural maintenance scheme. Doing work in an evening, we often do a lot of the work in an evening. That will add perhaps £15,000 to £20,000 on that one evening just to do that work in an evening to avoid delay and disruption in the daytime. Again, that's something we want to look at. How comfortable would we be doing that work at different times of day? There's a risk, particularly in the winter, of doing work in evenings and overnight. Laying of materials is temperature critical. It compromises our materials choice. Our kind of, as an engineer, traditional engineer, our preferred material choice is a material called hot rolled asphalt and chip. It's basically a bituminous material that you then lay chips on top of. If it's too cold, you can't lay the chips. So that compromises our materials choice right the way through the winter. That's a far more resilient material. So straight away, anything we do in the winter, we're compromised on materials choice. As I say, all those extra costs of doing stuff in an evening. So you kind of got to be really careful when people challenge us. Are you comparing like for like? And there's the hidden costs that I referred to as well. If I go back when I started at Staffordshire, every one of these schemes would have gone through an individual procurement process. So you've got to write the document, you've got to go through a tendering process, you've got to check the contractor for health, safety, quality. That's a whole load of cost that is or would be in the county council's team historically. It was taken out, and AMI now do a lot of that for us. They are doing that procurement. They are doing those health and safety checks. So hence why you have to look kind of behind the details of the work being delivered on the ground and look at all the extra costs that we have. Yeah.
Only to say, I think what I'm, and probably the committee are really keen to get hold of is data that does compare like for like structural maintenance schemes or very similar like for like. And I completely understand AMI will have their own costs and they put those costs onto the overall structural maintenance scheme cost. But other authorities will be doing the same, but just differently. It might not be AMI as the delivery partner, they might be doing the works themselves. I just want to see that data so that I can say for sure I know that this council is getting best value for money, or at least good value for money, and we get a good quality product, etc. You know, it's that sort of data that I need. If I see the value for money information here, I can't, with good conscience, tell my residents we're getting the best value for money, because I just cannot see that information. And I think we as a committee, I say we as a committee, me as a member of this committee, in a way, would like to see that information. And I wonder whether we could have that, either whether it's there for us to see, or whether in 6 to 12 months we could commission that information just to check that we are genuinely getting a good, well, we're getting good value for money, especially from Amy. I think my concern is you might get the materials cost be the same, but the extra costs of managing the site with the traffic management, with the health and safety requirements and so on, could there be a difference there in what Amy are charging us compared to perhaps another provider, or us doing it ourselves? So that's something that I'd like to see, really. Over to you, Tim.
Yeah,
David, is that something that
we can find out information out, but I think we have to remember that we have had a huge inflationary increase in both materials. We have got everybody's, obviously you've got the normal workplace with pay increases and so forth, as well as materials, as well as machinery. And those are things that we have to take in account to what we're doing. And I'll always bring it back to when people say about how much does it cost and why does it cost that much. And if you take it to your own drive, where you have a small amount of tarmac compared to what we have to put on for a road, and how much that is and how much that's gone up, then you can sort of see what sort of inflationary issues we've got. But we can find that information out and pass it on. And I think that's part of the point. The other part of the point that was made in the presentation was the buying power. Due to the buying power, we've been able to get things that other authorities haven't by using the partner that we have. And in one case, especially when we were right in the midst of COVID, tarmac was very, very hard to come by. We didn't have that problem due to the fact of the partnership that we've made. So that was a really important point, that when we come into value for money, it's making sure we can get the right materials at the right times.
Yeah, I think that data is quite important, that we can compare like for like-ish, if you like. You know, you're never going to get the same in anywhere else, but on the whole, I think we deliver a very, very good service. There are always improvements that can be made, and no doubt when we ask members to come in, those will come out. But is there anything else you wanted to ask, Connor, or are you done?
One more on structural maintenance, and then I'll stop. And then obviously I know the committee will obviously want to ask a lot of questions. One is, we've had an issue with the 511 Beaufort Road structural maintenance scheme, which isn't mentioned there, but it was £200,000 worth of work. I've spoken to another member who's also had a similar issue with their scheme. How many schemes are under investigation or have failed in the last 6 months? I'm talking structural maintenance schemes.
So there's the two. I'm not sure what the second one is, and I definitely know, obviously, A511 Beaufort Road, we've got some issues with material, which we're investigating, as you know. We'll get to the root cause of that and then work out what needs to be done in terms of any remediation. There is a second scheme that I am aware of. It might not be the same one, because it's quite a detailed technical. One of the technical conversation I referred to earlier on was a technical conversation between the laboratory and the supplier of the material, so it might not be the same one. So I'm definitely aware of two, but they might not be the same two.
And obviously I know that investigation is ongoing, but in terms of the schemes that will go on this financial year, what are we doing to make sure that doesn't happen again? Because from a reputation point of view, seeing 200k, 500k schemes go wrong is absolutely unacceptable to residents. So what are we going to do about it?
So we've got that whole suite of quality, which is being strengthened. And I say part of that is, if we'd have done Ashby Road, Beaufort Road, as we'd have wanted to, we'd have probably used HRA and chip. We didn't, because we'd done it towards the end of the season. So straight away, and I think the other scheme that I'm aware of is probably not HRA and chip as well, we're compromising materials choice. There is that balance. Do we get on and do it? Do we delay it? There's certainly more risk in the winter, but I say we are strengthening. We've already strengthened the clocker works. In fact, only the other day the clocker works did pick up a material issue and prevented several tens of thousands of pounds of wrong material being laid. So we are strengthening our process. We're strengthening the quality, the functional plan. In fact, only this week I was in conversation with Amy about their quality processes and the strengthening and greater visibility that needs to happen. We will continue to strengthen that. It's a bit like, it's not quite the Model T Ford. We will get issues. It's materials can sometimes be supplied off specification. On occasions we can get the wrong material. We pick that up. It isn't perfect. You know, there will be a percentage. What we try to do is make sure that that percentage is comparable to what, again, other organisations are seeing. We don't believe we're an outlier, but we'll continue to strengthen that, because absolutely the last thing we want to be doing is seeing something failing and going back and do it again, because that's reputational damage as well as cost. Clearly, if it's a failure because the material is wrong and it's been laid incorrectly, that will be put right at the contractor's own cost. And one of the things, again, we're strengthening through the functional specifications to get better visibility of that, because there are works that are done, that are repeated, and we don't properly capture the costs because we don't pay twice. So we don't capture the costs to make sure we have that visibility. That's something, again, we're strengthening. So we do know in future, we have a better handle on what value of work is needing to be redone. So yeah, like you, we don't want it. It's frustrating. It's cost. It's reputational damage. Some of it is being driven by the pace of the investment and the timing of it, which is not happening. But we need to make sure we've got that confidence, to give you the confidence that we're absolutely doing everything we can to minimise that risk.
Thank you, Connor, for coming this morning and for your comments and questions. David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Some quickies. Firstly, could I make a suggestion that one of our future highway training sessions, we concentrate on the responsibility of highways rather than looking at the operational side? I'm going through a learning curve with my local parish council about what the highways team can actually do legally and not do. That would be really quite useful to members to actually be aware of that. My second point is we see all the sort of future workload that you've got in terms of the operational way that you're going to do it, but I just wonder, because we don't name specific schemes that we've got coming forward, and I look at things like the Chetwynd Bridge, which is now closed, which is causing massive problems for agricultural vehicles that are having to now go through Tamworth to get to their land which they farm. And when you've got a farmer who farms both sides of the Chetwynd Bridge, he's got a long way round to get round to plough the other side of his fields. The next thing I was going to say, we went through and had a presentation to council some years ago about the use of materials for filling potholes, which were using plastic waste. A company in Wales that's manufacturing it. We understood that we were looking at that, but as a member, we've never heard anything back again. I would just want to say that on the member fund that we had, the additional funds that we had for pothole filling, I found that tremendously useful, and the programming of when that work was done and the information that I had back as a member was very, very helpful indeed. And I suppose the last point that I would make is that the biggest disaster I foresee is the retirement of Mary Lee, which is going to cause us in my division, and I think in Lichfield and 2 other areas, significant problems unless we can find someone who can fill the role with similar capability. Thank you, Chairman.
David, do you want to answer those, or do you want
Yeah,
to move on to
back.
questions?
I mean, obviously, as people retire, that is, but we are doing the restructuring process with a different style of management, so that would hopefully alleviate that. And it's good to hear that the extra money for the potholes has gone down very well within members' divisions. It is unfortunate that we took the decision to restrict the access to Chetwynd Bridge, but it was a case where that bridge it will not take those sort of weights any further, and it was going to damage it to a point where it would actually fail, and that's a safety issue. So I took that decision that we would shut that to agricultural vehicles. It doesn't mean that we're not looking for any additional investment from government on a second bridge that would allow vehicles, but obviously that is a very expensive proposition that we are looking at doing, but obviously it depends on whether we can get the finances for it. Happy for members if they want to know anything about what highways can and can't do. I don't think that's much of an issue really, and as you said about the workload, yeah, the highways teams are out there and they are doing a lot more information about what we are doing. But when it comes to the future highways and the capital programme, that's got to yet be finalised in Cabinet in March, and then that will get published so everybody will know what is going to be done, and hopefully we'll have a good idea of when it will be done in members' divisions. Similarly with the surface dressing programme, that will also be done once that's actually been approved by Cabinet.
Ross?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this as quick as I can. First of all, it's a very great report, very comprehensive, lots of data in there, which is always really useful. However, there's particularly in operational performance, and this is touching on something that Connor's brought up, is that there's lots of information until you get to quality. Suddenly there's no data, which immediately raises the concern that we're not being told how we're performing and where the failures are and what the measures of that. And these reports, there's lots of good news stories in there, but your role isn't just to tell us the good news stories. We were completely unaware of the issue that Connor had with the Bideford Road. That's the first I've heard about it, so that really should feature in this report as well, so we're aware of that. And then I read sentences like, overall, quality scorecards remain positive. Just alarm bells are ringing there that it's just really useful for us to have the empirical data so we can objectively make a view as a committee as to how we are performing in terms of quality. Or at least give us some reassurance that we are performing in terms of quality, because we just don't know from that statement. John, on claims, very quickly, this is very anecdotal, but I've had a lot of people come to me saying that they've made a claim and it's just been immediately been batted away from the county council. I don't know how the system works. I'm not sure whether or not I have asked for them to provide copies of reports so I can chase it for them. They've never been forthcoming. It may just be people grumbling, but it'd be interesting for us to have a very brief overview of how claims work and how they're processed. And is there an opportunity for the council to just simply say no to someone who's got a legitimate claim? I'm assuming not. Comms, I think we need to improve comms. You touched on that. A very quick example is there's been a pothole in my division which effectively closed a country road for about 4 weeks. My other half has been messaging me about it because she reported it. It was repaired about 2 weeks ago, but she's had nothing back to say that this road's been repaired. So I thought we'd got an automatic system that made that report back, but she hasn't had anything back. So there's obviously some kind of issue there. And the only other observation is on your summary there are all the various green sections. One of them is about positive media. That's not my perception. Only last week, there was a BBC News report which listed all the various counties across the country, and I think they highlighted Derbyshire as the worst, but Staffordshire was mentioned as well as one of the worst performing authorities in terms of pothole repairs. I've had 2 or 3 radio reports in my area. One of my potholes, the residents have had a birthday party for it with calling the caterpillar cake. I had 100 metres of road that was underwater for 4 weeks, and the residents had an airbed party on it, all of which was reported in the local media. So my perception of a positive media response there isn't my understanding of it, and I'm not quite sure if that really should be a green, frankly. Thank you.
Charlotte?
Thank you. First of all, I'm very much looking forward to the statistics from Connor's excellent question. I just wanted to make a comment that I found it incredibly useful to meet with the highways team before they did Broad Street leak, and that was really helpful because I also met with the leader of the district council at the same time and another colleague from that particular ward. So that was incredibly helpful that they gave us time to do that. And it was just a very positive experience. The thing I want to ask about, because I think it's been in the news either today or yesterday, was the impact of pollution from the roads going into waterways. They identified pollution from roads as being one of the key factors about pollution in waterways. So I'm hoping that our highways laboratory has some impact in looking at that to make sure that we're not making the situation worse for our highly polluted waterways.
Thank you for that question. I must admit, in terms of local data, in terms of outfalls off highway runoff into chalk streams, local watercourses, I don't know if we've got any specific data about that. I'm guessing the Environment Agency are monitoring watercourse water quality, working with DEFRA and the likes, and would be providing that but back or bringing us an issue if there was anything about that. But I'll have to double check that and see if there's anything else that we're doing more proactive on it. But more generally, at a national level, I can explain or can clarify that DEFRA and DFT have commissioned an initial piece of work to ensure that future highway maintenance operations, activities, guidance is recognising the threat of highway runoff in affecting watercourses and particularly chalk streams. And as part of my role as nationally is that I chair the UK Roads Board, and as part of that role I'm supporting that activity as well, along with the UK Roads Liaison Group, DEFRA, DFT, to make sure that future highway management guidance and codes of practice are very cognizant of those sort of risks and make sure we build that into our operational plans to both prevent it in the future but also mitigate what's happening now.
So is there regular testing of our waterways, and who's responsible for doing that?
The EA.
And the Environment
do they
Agency
do it? I mean, do they do it
testing of
locally? I mean,
those and the National Canal and Rivers Trust, they will do that as well. But I think we have to remember as well, it's what comes off the roads into our gullies and as it goes off into the watercourses isn't usually off the road. It's what goes on the road. So it's the vehicles as it's going over. It's the pollution that's washed into it. And remembering that we also have quite a lot of water coming off different farmers' fields that come onto our highways as well, which gets passed around. That's why when it comes to in the winter we use the minimum amount of grit that we can, because we're trying to put as little salt and grit down as we can, which will then get washed into the waterways. But there's very little actually come off the road itself. And with several types of repairs that we are trying to do now, especially with the thermal patches, not only is it a carbon reduction, but also it's the amount of material, and therefore there's a lot less of potential pollutants being able to be used.
Sam?
Thank you. Mine's quite a simple one. Your photos were great because it's lovely to see what goes on in other areas. I think you get encased in your little box, don't you? And you don't realise what goes on and what's spent in other areas. I noticed that you put a footpath in. My question would be, and I don't know if it's with the environmental resources team, but how will you maintain that footpath? Because at the moment we're not maintaining footpaths, are we? To a standard where people can walk down a footpath quite comfortably or ride a bike down a footpath quite comfortably with their children, because I feel that's what we're letting people down with at the moment. And also, you know, you said about the customer, people contacting more for like potholes and reports. I think that's because we're sharing the My Staff's app an awful lot. I mean, that's all we do is if we get a pothole, we advertise that it's been fixed and then we put underneath it, if you find a pothole, report it My Staff's. And so many people do that now. I think that's where you're picking up a lot more potholes where people don't normally think to, like they go down a country lane. They sometimes think, oh, it's a country lane, we won't report it. But now they think, yeah, we'll report it, we've got this app. So I think that's where your increase has come from a great deal. Thank you.
I agree. It's people using the right schemes, but also it's the fact it is very prevalent in the press nationally and locally, and so people are much more acute to do it. But we still notice that most of the actual defects are picked up by our officers, rather than the actual repair, the people bringing them in. And we've also, as I said previously, we've now got our vans that are fitted with the new cameras and the AI on there, which are, as they drive around, they are picking up the defects as it drives around on a day-to-day basis, and that's fed in on a real-time basis. So that's bringing more and more of the defects to our knowledge as we go. When it comes to the pathways and so forth, you know that's something that, well, I know it's something that's definitely close to your heart, but it's definitely close to most people's hearts. That's why when we were talking about the introduction or the reintroduction and a change of reintroduction of the environmental teams that we're proposing, that might be able to assist with that. But we will still be wanting to look at then whether districts, boroughs and potentially parishes will be able to assist in further extenuating that work so that we can get more done. But that is part of what we will be looking to do.
Our parish council have just put £5,000 into an area that's been that neglected, and nobody knew it was county land. So we have actually used £5,000 of our parish council money to repair that area, clear it, wipe it, weed it, get rid of it. The gullies are all running free. So we are working that way.
Thank you very much.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Mine sort of follows on a little bit from Connor and what Ross was saying. So, obviously, as councillors, we get specific queries about a specific issue, whether it's a tree, a grid, whatever. But also, we get general, our roads are awful, what are you going to do about it? I was in Scotland, France, wherever, and their roads are perfect. Why aren't our roads perfect? And I think what I would like is like a half a page, couple of paragraphs on what we face. 6p in a pound is spent on highways because most of it is spent on adult and children's social services. So people don't actually understand this, no matter how many times you tell them. So I'd like a stock answer that we can say, this is the context, and in that 6p is spent on 6,000 kilometres of roads, and we've done 15,000 potholes this year. And just to make it easier for you, James, I've sent you my suggestions in an email, so that I'd like you, if you don't mind, to build on that and bring that back to us so that we can have a nice, in-context answer. It'd be great if we had a little bit of benchmarking to add into that and saying, and we are in the upper quartile. We can't always be top because that will change, but it'd be great to be in the upper quartile of managing costs and getting things done. So if we could have that, that would be enormously helpful to, I would imagine, all councillors, because it's very difficult for us. This is a brilliant presentation, and you know I'm a great fan of the highways team, particularly in my division. And it's great. There's an awful lot of information there. You can't give... if I sent that out to somebody, they would read the first page. People do not read more than half a page. That's about the maximum. So I just think if you could build on what I've sent you and let us have that back, that'd be really useful. But great presentation. Thank you very much.
As you've already got that, James, I don't think you need to comment. We'll just wait and see what happens.
We'll have a look. But I think when you look at it, there's a lot of information already out there, especially on our website, and we try to do it. But obviously, when it comes to it, for local members especially, I think it is a case where there's a lot of information, especially will be coming out about what's happened within your divisions, and you now get the monthly update. Yeah. That's something that you can refer to as well, because that's it. You can put that on social media quite easily and refer to it. And you have got the confirm system, which also tells you what has been done in your area. So that's another one where you can actually do that. So when it comes to a generalised question of why is ours so bad and so forth, we can put a stock answer, but that usually doesn't seem to, from my experience, especially being a cabinet member, that doesn't help. It's more a case where people want the local thing of what you're going to do about my road or this road particularly. So I think if you can make it more around those on your responses, that's usually the best way.
Thank you, David. I've made some notes of what people have said today, because obviously we haven't got any recommendations. It's a presentation and an oral update. So obviously the first one is something that Connor said, is that like for like data where we can. Let's have a look at that, see how we're comparing. David, highways responsibility presentation, and in that maybe do go through the claims process and how it works. These are just things for you to take away, gentlemen. For me, personally, a better working relationship with National Highways. I had a scheme held up only last week because National Highways couldn't get their health and safety team together. And it's taken me 7 months to get a repair done because of National Highways. Where are we? The Places pilot that David, you mentioned, for me, that doesn't get communicated out, because there was a pothole fixed outside my house only last week, and the one next to it got left. I went out to them and said, we're piloting that you fix all the holes in the same place. If it ain't on the list, love, it ain't getting done. You know, and that's got to be better communication with the team. I'll let you come in a minute, David. And as I say, some of the workforce are just not carrying that out. If it's not on the list for them to repair, they're not doing it. And that wasn't just in my road. I've seen it elsewhere as well. I think we need to drill down into 600 claims so far in 5 weeks, 6 weeks into the year. We need this data as to why, what's going wrong, and is it because Sam says more people are using my staffs and reporting it and then realising that they've got a damaged tyre or buckled wheel. And then lastly, I think other than the DHP timelines, it takes far too long to get a job done, in my opinion. I'm one of these people that report it, I want it done. And I know that that's not how it works, but there's a time frame that something should be done in, and sometimes the DHP, the things that we come up with and say we want this done, it's 6 months, 12 months down the line. You're into the next year of funding before we're getting anything done, and I think everyone can elevate with that one. And then when we go live with the customer journey, James, I think before it goes live, perhaps take us through that, so we can better understand what the customer journey is when they phone up or email in, see how it gets logged, see how it gets recorded, how it's categorised, and the whole journey going forward. So there's a few things for you to take away from that today. Everybody happy with those, or have I missed anything? Sorry, you need to wave at me, Philip. You need to be quick, though, because we're running out of time.
Can I just come back to your point, though, about the whole place? So if you remember, we trialled the whole price approach, but that was an extra £7 million a year that we haven't got as yet. And we are not into that current scheme of mending lots of potholes at the moment due to the fact it's winter time. So we're doing our category 1s and our category 2s, but the actual category 3s don't. Due to the weather, it doesn't allow us to do them in the right way, which is why I had to authorise the holding repairs, because we had several hundred category 1s turn up in the end of last year, beginning of this. So we actually are fixing those as we can properly, but also where we need to, because of the topography, because of the weather, because of the state, we're having to do some of the holding repairs, which we will go back to. So yeah, when it comes to the defects within your area, that is something that we are working on. So when there are defects and people have reported them within your area and they get fixed, that's something which we will want you to know about. But as I say, currently we are in pothole season, that's when it actually starts. Come March time, when we then change around and go into our fixing period, we'll be a lot better off. But it is currently where the weather, as it has been, and I will remind everybody of how wet last year was. The water table hasn't been this high now for quite so many years, and farmers are already complaining that their subsurfaces are moving due to the water tables being up, and it is water that damages roads, hence we see more of a damage out there.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. I'm glad we've got the increase in cuts from 6 to 8 and the weed control from 1 to 3. However, in East Staffordshire, sometimes, because East Staffs Borough Council were cutting some of our grass verges, but now we're doing the whole lot. How do we identify which is county responsibility and which and who's going to do it? Because there's been quite a lot of confusion over the last 12 months as to who's responsible for it. In-house inspections, are we doing our inspections? Because I thought we were bringing inspections back in. Yeah, okay. And then what powers do we have? So my route here, every time I come in, I have to pass 2 accident spots that have now got traffic lights on. One's a house that got crashed into that was done last May, still there. So what can we do about trying to hurry up that getting repaired? I know it's an insurance thing. The other one is now at Burndurst Mill, where some young lad got killed and smashed into the bridge. People are moaning. It's not my patch, but I keep getting it. You know, the Stafford Road is impassable through. So what powers can the county council do to get these insurance companies to hurry up and get these repairs done so we can take off the traffic management, which is costing thousands? Thank you, Chair.
Just that it's not East Staffs, it's us that cut the grass in East Staffs. East Staffs haven't taken it back. And when it comes to individual cases, if it's going on for too long, please flag it up to James or David, who can chase it up. But obviously, the longer it takes, the more the insurance companies are going to have to pay out, because it is them in the end. So you would think they would want to get it done as quickly as possible.
Connor, lastly.
Quick fire. In terms of the drainage programme, the planned maintenance, how far are we behind?
Currently 40,000.
Okay, and in terms of months, so say there was a drain on confirmed that says this is the date that it should be scheduled for cleanse.
Well, it's a combination, because we've got 3 types of, there's 3 elements to the programme. There's annual, biennial and triennial. So 1, 2 and 3 years.
Go with annual.
It is, so annual I think at the moment is, I haven't got, the annual is closer.
Yeah.
But it's the biennial and the triennial which are further behind. I can get you the figures, I just haven't got them in my head.
It would be good to have them, because if I look on the confirmed system, which was great when it first started, I can't now, with good conscience, tell residents that that's the date that those drains are going to be done, or even the time period. So in my experience, it was about 9 months out, and it's meant to be an annual cleanse. And that means that main A roads have got a multitude of block gullies. So we really need to look at that. Second of all, temporary repairs.
Just on that, Connor, actually, we've actually made sure that we've tried to keep up with the annual ones on the main roads. So that was why the triennial ones have gone farther behind. So we've made to do the safe, the more dangerous ones, as they would be, as often as we can. But as I said, we are, if you remember, we are actually chasing our tails with this. We do a huge amount of water that we've got coming in.
Yeah. Temporary repairs, we see those a lot at the moment, which is fair enough. You're trying to get round as many category 1s and 2s as possible. There's a reputational risk here, because residents see that as the repair. They don't see it as a temporary repair, so they come and report it to me as a problem. I've also seen, when those temporary repairs are carried out, that we take a long time until we come back and we do the job properly. Now, should there be a priority system that for the temporary repairs, that our team should come back and do those properly within a certain timescale, rather than leaving them for 6 to 9 months and then coming back? The issue is, there was a pothole, it was category 1, it gets temporarily repaired, and then the council seems to forget about it, because it's essentially been temporarily repaired, till it comes to next winter and the temporary repair comes out and it's category 1 again. So the question is, are we prioritising those temp repairs for a proper fix?
So when a Cat 1 gets a temporary repair, it'll be on the system, but to be fair, if we have other Cat 1s around, you have to push the button. If we have other Cat 1s, then we'll go and do those, because if the repair is actually okay and fixed for the temporary time, then it is logical to then go and fix the other ones first and then go back to that one when we're able to. We're also trying to bring forward a date and a responsible date for category 3 defects when they're repaired. So it isn't the case where we have the we haven't got a finite amount of resource. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the safest way of repairing is carried out. So it might be the case where it lasts a few months, but if it's actually holding and it's okay and it hasn't deteriorated, then actually we're doing it in the right way, in my opinion.
Thank you. I think you've got a bit to take away from that, gentleman. Thank you, members, for all of your input into that. Thank you for your attendance this morning, guys. And we'll carry on with our last item, which is the work programme. Jonathan.
It's just basically as set out in the schedule, Chairman, other than we've had a request from Reverend Metcalfe for the committee to consider the SACRE annual report at the March meeting. So with your approval, Chairman, I'll add that to the list. Yeah, happy for that. He comes every year with his review, and perhaps we probably need to put it on to the last meeting of the municipal year and remember that. We always seem to forget it, don't we? So happy for that. And members happy for that to go on to the March meeting, the SACRE update. It's the SACRE update. It's the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education. Yeah. Okay, everyone happy with that? Okay. And that'll be it then. Thank you, everyone. We haven't got anything in the confidential, so that draws us to the end of today's meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and I close the meeting at 12:20.
Thank you, Chairman.